Hi everyone, welcome to our Digimind webinar this afternoon. I'd like to ask a couple more seconds for people to trickle in and dial in before I start this session proper. Um, I hope it's been a great week and more importantly, a great start to the year so far for everyone in 2024. It's only been only 2 months into the year. It does feel like a lot has already happened. As we're ramping up all our activities, right? And making sense of all the developments coming our way. But all in all, I think it's been a good kind of busy, especially with the Lunar New Year, giving us a little bit of respite to recharge. And I hope it's been the same for everyone else as well. Okay, now I think we can start the session. Hi to everyone again who just joined. Today we'll be talking about social intelligence or social listening for that matter, the way it can impact the way you gather and analyze future data, which is a simple way of foretelling the theme of today's webinar, listening to tomorrow. Listening in particular is the intentional gathering of conversations that matter to you, right? While tomorrow really hints at what's unknown and soon to come. This is our webinar, our first webinar of 2024, and I'm very excited to help everyone unpack key learnings and insights about how we can do more with social listening data. Before we zoom in further, I'd like to spare a minute to introduce our experts for today's webinar session and discussion. Starting with me, I'm Jared. I've been in the social listening space ever since I started Digimind, soon to be 4 years now, helping those around me deliver key marketing insights of various industry sectors, from FMCG to F&B and even retail. Aside from content, I also help expand and carry the Digimind name across APAC. So you definitely see me at relevant marketing and tech summits and trade shows. Theo and Ashmita, would you both like to share a bit about yourself? Starting with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Nice to meet everyone online today. My name is Theodore. I'm a customer success manager at Digimind. My entire career has also revolved around social listening, like Jared. I've started in other social listening companies and came to Digimind sometime in 2023. But my fundamental role has been helping my clients to be able to understand more about how to use the platform for their various use cases and to continuously draw value from social listening out of the package that they currently have with Digimind. Off to you, Ashmita.
Thanks, Theodore and Jared, for having me. Brief intro about myself. I'm currently data director with VML and I help with the data strategy. Over almost about the last 2 decades, I've been helping several brands with their strategies, business strategies using data. I've had the good fortune of having worked on the brand side, on the consultancy side, as well as on the agency side, and also have been fortunate to work with B2Bs as well as with B2Cs. So I believe my core strength is the fact that I can help bridge the communication gap between business leaders and technologists and analysts. So I can break down the geek speak and cull out the insights that really matter for making strategy decisions. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to a great discussion.
Thank you, Ash. Now that you know a little bit about ourselves, maybe I'll go down into the agenda for today. We'll first briefly share who we are as a company and what our social listening technology can do before taking you through to examine the main topic of today, which is horizon scanning, letting you understand the nuances and steps you undergo to fulfill it. In the second segment, Theo and Ish will take you over to explore Ashmina's experience in her years of using and analyzing social listening data, especially in relation to understanding trends, monitoring stakeholders, and anticipating crisis. Lastly, we'll conclude with a little bit of a Q&A. So in regards to Q&As, if you have any questions during the webinar itself, please direct them to the tab found on the top right-hand corner of the GoToWebinar platform. Fret not, the questions here are made public before we push them live, so you can definitely ask away. Going to who we are as a company, I will start with a quick introduction to Digimind, which is helpful for those who don't really know who we are and what we do. In Digimind, we build solutions to help big organizations make better strategic decisions, We do this by way of our own proprietary social listening technology. Our main offering is collecting online or consumer data across the web and social media, consolidating them and breaking them down to big data into breaking them down into very digestible sort of graphs, charts, and dashboards automatically, which brings a little bit more efficiency and time saving for our end users, who are people who are just joining in, like ourselves, marketers, PR professionals for their reporting needs, helping them identify what is really happening out there on a digital landscape easily. With real-time listening, you're basically taking away the need to manually scour through data to find what you need. Our social listening AI is capable of filtering the abundance of noise in your data, with the final aim to only show you what is clear for you to take actionable insights. Whether your objectives are to improve brand reputation or extract consumer or trend insights, or even generate competitive intelligence, the platform setup is configured by our customer success teams to help our clients get up to speed with making sense of their world. What we do very well is offering a 360-degree scope or a social listening suite, offering a solution for every touch point in your marketing and customer journey. With our peripheral features like historical search, our clients can unlock 2 years of archival social media data immediately, giving you basically an instant sort of snapshot of trends that date back some time ago, which is incredibly neat if you think about it, to give content on external topics of interest in your industry at any moment. For own analytics, you can measure performance all in the same platform, giving you key metrics on own posts, naturally tied to understanding engagement and share of voice against your competitors' campaigns. Lastly, that's where you'll find the most value in ROI is how your insights and are consolidated, packaged, and disseminated, right? This is where social link AI really takes the cake to help take the workload off your shoulders, helping you reach insights quicker and simpler for reporting needs. If you need to understand whether the volume of your discussions around your brand has changed over a period of time, or whether or not positive or negative sentiment has reached a new threshold level, our tool has unlimited dashboards to visualize what you require. Going to the meat of this today's topic, which is horizon scanning. Horizon scanning, as it says on screen, is the act of examining information to determine changes and developments and that pose opportunities, risks, or threats to a brand. Right? We all understand how necessary it is to stay ahead of news, especially as we hear today about stakeholders, emergent technologies, and even competitors that can make or break what your brand decides to launch or activate. The goal here is really simple. You basically don't want to get left behind because you missed the signal to put your brand in the best possible light or position. This process of examining information of this type is only possible and accessible when you have AI-powered tools like online media monitoring and social listening tools on hand. I'll explain the following slides on what possible data you are meant to extract for horizon scanning. Uh, so navigating the PR, comms, and marketing horizon. In 2024, brands are faced with a constant stream of evolving opportunities and threats that can help or hinder your competitive edge and brand health. For example, in the Philippines, Starbucks faced a sort of public scrutiny after consumers found a poster limiting discounts for senior citizens and people with disabilities. And then news basically went viral after that following the announcement. Obviously, this sort of sparked outrage online, with many accusing the brand of violating anti-discrimination laws. The government, I remember, even held a hearing to discuss the issue. In the past, and you might think an apology might suffice. However, with social media today, you can really observe and visualize brand sentiment. There were also calls to sort of boycott Starbucks and support competitors. So this is really a big crisis, right? So, however, but on the flip side, some defended the policy change, arguing that it's actually created to prevent abuse of the discount system. So it is evident that you not only resonate with your target audience, but do so by gathering context from all perspectives to formulate the right messages. It is key that you anticipate potential upheavals and stay in tune with the voice of the customer. Think of horizon scanning as a sort of crystal ball to prepare for looming developments. Um, I want to go into basically four steps. The first being to identify and track industry and consumer trends. We want to first encourage people to adopt the mindset of being proactive when it comes to utilizing data, as opposed to only acting when the need arises, right? So traditionally, PR and comms professionals have used media monitoring tools to track their own coverage, but more advanced tools like we have today can now track trending topics too, and through various and wide coverage on top of that as well. With that said, you need to invest in a modern tool with real-time tracking and alerting capabilities to expand your monitoring to a whole berth of sources, from news sources, forums to social media. So you cannot do the rest of what I'm about to say without it, basically. This is a poignant approach for brands to position themselves strongly in their industry by keeping an eye on the latest developments with key KPIs such as brand sentiment, share of voice indexing, and general public engagement and discourse. You can objectively assess whether or not your next strategy or move might benefit or hamper your business goals. When you're ready to unleash innovative ideas to your customers and industry, social listening makes your efforts more impactful as you view how your industry is reacting towards your brand, which over time helps to only improve your messaging and offerings. For the next step, it's also about turning data in that you've gathered into intelligent horizon scanning insights that drive decision making for your teams and across your business organization. The first thing you want to do is map your stakeholders. You want to identify key groups in your organization, such as customers, investors, and partners, and even your employees as well. You want to consider who's already talking about your brand in the mainstream and social, and which groups you want to actively engage. Then, secondly, you want to proceed with collecting and measuring sentiment and reactions. Once you define your key stakeholder groups, you can collect data on what they're saying about your brand, industry, and relevant topics that you are interested in. You can definitely leverage any of the below to gather your information from social media sources to reports, surveys, focus groups, and even mainstream media to sort of collect all this data and put it into one platform. The third is using historical analysis to refine your messaging. You can review historical data to assess how your brand's messaging around certain topics and campaigns resonated with public stakeholders. Right. With this knowledge and a nuanced understanding of stakeholder and consumer behavior, you can refine your messaging for maximum impact. Um, I want to give an example here. In our latest F&B industry report, we wanted to investigate the demand for alternative proteins. One of the metrics we wanted to analyze was sentiment around animal-derived protein to find if there's a correlation between a decline in positive sentiment around animal meats and in the same period a growing consumer preference for more plant-based options. Looking at the social landscape is one good way to understand if a movement is still in its infancy or maturity phases. From here, brands can make a strategic recommendation to either bring about more awareness or innovate their products offerings towards niche consumer preferences. The third step is really about detecting risks. In the unpredictable landscape of PR and marketing, foresight is your shield against poor brand health. In this campaign that we did sort of analyze under the same report, there was a campaign that was created called Reboot Food by Replanet. It was an NGO sort of organization in the UK, which raised awareness and sparked discussion on precision fermentation, which is basically another way of cultivating meat or getting meat apart from just the animal meats. So the key point here is that media coverage highlighted concerns like hostility towards the technology and objections to genetic modification. Consumers held diverse perspectives with a significant majority of sentiment being negative, while there was only a moderate sort of positive outlook on what the technology might pose or hold in the future. The point here to make is that we want to enable social listening sentiment analysis to address consumer concerns and foster understanding. Um, to address their concerns, and is where it's crucial for the wider acceptance of new innovation in the sector. So you can definitely see here in the graph here that there's a sort of a upper and higher limit of average sentiment. And when sort of when it goes above that threshold, that's where you want to be concerned with yourself with. But when you have historical data to look at patterns for which your brand normally sort of scales. So from here, you can definitely sort of react when a sudden spike is reached. And you also might want to also use events as indicators, determining whether or not new stories or events on the horizon are likely to pull your brand or industry into the spotlight. Thereafter, you can decide whether this is a good or bad time to launch any initiatives and whether to engage journalists or influencers to jump in on the topic. Lastly, it's all really about bringing it all together to ensure the best ROI coming out of horizon scanning. The last thing you want to do is keep the data for yourself and not present the data to relevant teams. Imagine discovering an uptrend in conversations about implementing a game-changing technology, right? That could revolutionize the way consumers perceive and purchase your product. Wouldn't it be exciting to share this groundbreaking information with your product managers? So when you do so, you can definitely bring about information to important people in your organization who can make meaningful impact by executing strategies necessary for your business goals. Rounding off my segment here, I won't be going over in the detail again about each of the steps, but this slide will give you a good summary of all the steps that will take you to horizon scanning success. If there is one thing to take away, it's about adopting a proactive approach to understanding data, whether it is for building a picture of what your stakeholders, customers, or simply competitors are saying. If you have a strong objective, you'll be able to create a social listening roadmap to drive future decision making or detect risks like bad buzz before it gains traction. So there you go. Next, I'll pass my time off to Theo to discuss with Ashmita her valuable experience on putting social listening to good use.
Thank you so much, Jared, for handing it over to me. Ashmita, thank you so much for joining us on this session today to share your experience in terms of using social listening data for the different purposes that you have used in your entire career. From what I understand, quite a bit of your experience revolves working around different data sets to be able to help you inform the decisions that your internal stakeholders have. What are some of your thoughts in terms of being able to contextualize different patterns and streams of data in the course of being able to advise your stakeholders, your clients, etc.?
Um, Businesses deal with a lot of data. At any point in time, there is just too much data out there. And it is the analyst's job to kind of sift through all of it and cull out the most important insights that are relevant. Often this can be a fairly tedious task, and that is sometimes people get overwhelmed. I mean, not just the analysts, even the business strategists or the leaders, when they are faced with a lot of data from various data points, a common tendency is to get jarred with so much information, or being unable to look at the correct data points that are actually needed for the strategy. So having said that, it remains very, very critical, especially for crisis monitoring, or to actually look at what the customers are saying to understand what your brand strategy should be or your marketing strategy should be. Listening to the customer remains more important as ever. And what has become more important now over the years is being able to do that sifting job properly, and to ensure that you're still being able to get the correct insights at the right time. So social media has given has expanded the possibilities of collecting all that information. Earlier it used to be just quant surveys or qual surveys, and now you can just literally go out there and get a tab of what the market is saying directly through social media. So there's more data. The data remains very important. The job now is to ensure that it's contextual when you're presenting it back. So probably a little more difficult right now, but thanks to AI and all these smart tools in the market, we do have help.
Yeah, I think there's one thing that it always comes back to, because you mentioned that there's a lot of data out there and you want to be able to utilize and maximize as much of this data, but it's not easy, necessarily easy, to be able to sift through every single mention. These days we talk about big data and there's so many data points that you can look at. And there's of course automation that you can use from different tools, and even Digimind has its own automation that we use to do data segmentation. I would imagine that for your team, perhaps social listening is just one of those different data points that you look at. But how do you go about utilizing social listening to sort of create a narrative? How does it contextualize? How does it work with other data sets?
So it depends on a case to case basis. So the advantage of social listening is that it is telling you exactly what the customer is saying, right? So and it has this qualitative aspect to it. So a lot of the other tools will give us raw numbers or just numbers. So we have to look at the trends using these numbers and try and kind of figure out what might be happening, what's causing a peak in traffic or a particular struggle in a certain point. So social listening helps, especially in the marketing field, to listen in to what the actual customer, the user of the brand, is saying and provides flavor. So, for example, during launches of products or during crisis moments with brands, if you are listening in, you're able to know exactly what the pain points of the customers are. So in a previous launch event for a big mobile brand, we got to know that some of the features were actually being made fun of by the customers. There were memes being created. So it's a good pointer, and then we were able to use that sense of humor in that product feature to come up with our own campaigns to ride the wave. So I think it's invaluable to actually get to hear what the customer is saying at the spur of the moment.
Yeah, I think one key thing out of what you've just mentioned is that social listening has a very, very qualitative element to it, and you're able to understand what people perceive about a particular new product that has been launched, or perhaps like how's the general sentiment of it. And this comes very, very spontaneously. It's very much unprompted as compared to what survey data as well. But of course, all of these
Yes.
kind of data sets can work together to help you to be able to get a more complete understanding of what the landscape is like out there, because sometimes survey questions might be very prompted based on the questions that are asked. But complementary to that, we have social listening data, which allows you to sort of create that narrative, understand more about what people feel about that topic spontaneously. What are some struggles that your clients or your stakeholders have in terms of being able to do all of this if, let's say, they do not have any tools, AI tools at their hand to be able to understand more about the data?
Hmm. So, I guess while we just talked about some of the advantages of social listening, uh, many brands sometimes fail to kind of complement this data, right, from social listening with the data that they have otherwise in the company. As a result of which, they do not know how to use the data. So I guess the it is the analyst's job or the data team's job to uh, bring in that exactly contextual element, and for that it might need a little more deep diving. I've personally found that while most of the conversation drivers or the posts that have maximum engagements are coming in from big media groups or sometimes brand led campaigns that have a lot of marketing money behind it, the actual nuggets, real nuggets of insights coming from the comments and the replies from the actual customer to those highly promoted articles. So that one will need a little more extra work to try and scan through all those comments and come up with what is really relevant. So the challenge is the huge volume of the data, and the challenge is also kind of the dependency on the smartness of the analyst to be able to bring the correct flavor into the reporting.
Definitely. I think it's really, really very important for the analyst itself to to also be very adept in terms of understanding what kind of data comes out from this particular channel of data, or whatever kind of data source they are currently looking at. And it's very evident that even if, let's say, we have AI tools at our hands, there is very much the human element that also needs to come into the picture to be able to understand what is being said. And that's where really our data scientists and all our data analysts are really able to show their worth and show the expertise that they have in terms of understanding those sentiments. In terms of social listening itself, one of the things that we have commonly been asked, and the challenge is that we do have a challenge in terms of understanding who is talking to us, who is the audience that we are actually looking at, in terms of understanding more about the audience personas behind those people, especially because sometimes it might be anonymized data. What are your thoughts in terms of being able to understand, through the use of social listening and other tools, the audiences that you have behind those data sets?
Um, yeah, like you rightly mentioned, it is little murky. You cannot get accurate numbers, and I don't think it's also allowed to actually know, gender interests. We do get a sense of it, but for the large part, I guess that sense is enough. And if we
Mhm.
really want very accurate information, then we do not rely on social listening. To be frank, we rely on other sources of data. For example, we have qualitative surveys, quantitative surveys. We have CRM data, which is a lot more accurate if you want to really know the exact demographics. But social listening is, you don't want to kind of get into PII territory. And so it's a little vague, but it's indicative enough.
Yeah, I think that really brings it all together in terms of how different data sets kind of complement one another to help you understand more about audiences. And very much like what you said, because Digimind and all of the social listening tools are data compliant, privacy compliant. Of course, you're not able to necessarily deep dive into every single user to extract their data. But what we do have as well is all of these other data streams that we are able to integrate to work together to sort of understand who are the different personas behind them, um, as well as be able to do those audience segmentations without necessarily having to um, look so granularly into the data, because we also have different kind of like estimates that we kind of can have to understand, perhaps who are the overall generic sort of audience personas we have, but not necessarily to look at each individual users itself. And we use different kind of methods, whether it's through the keywords, being able to detect their interests. We sort of are able to already identify certain key interests and key interest groups in terms of the personas that we have behind it. Um, in terms of social listening data, we cover such a wide range of platforms, and there might be some interest from our clients to be able to understand more about, a particular specific social media platform. And from that social media platform, there are also different drivers of conversation. What is your current understanding of where we are trending towards in terms of the drivers of those conversations in the social media platforms?
Drivers, as in, you mean whether the brand or the media or the influencers? Is that your question?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, much as I would like to see the brand that I'm working for drive the conversations, it is unfortunately often the media houses that have the maximum engagements. And it might be that we might believe, being on the brand side, that our campaign is garnering maximum engagements. That is rarely the case, though it does happen sometimes. If we can get the chemistry right and we can come up with the right kind of post, it does tend to go viral and there's a lot of engagements happening on it. But largely, I tend to feel number one driver of engagement is the kind of information posted by the brands themselves, the publishing companies themselves. And the second is the influencers. The influencers tend to get a lot of engagements, their posts.
Yeah, definitely. I think we are kind of in the era where different users of social media platforms are individually on their own already able to drive social media conversations. If we talk about in the past, you'll be looking at what mainstream media is sharing with you. But in this day and age, it's really quite easy, so to speak, for one single user to have an audience of perhaps 100,000, 1 million followers. And from there, information perpetuates so quickly through the different data, the different platforms. And I think this is sort of where horizon scanning also does leave us with, in terms of being able to help us understand, through the data, through the different stakeholders that we have in mind, how to detect any possible risk, any potential threats that you might have from what the on the ground sentiments are in terms of what social media users are saying about a particular brand, so that you can actually kind of understand, perhaps um, who are the ones who are driving those conversations, where this might lead you sometime in the future, especially with regards to the sentiment around your brand, whether you have any specific risk or not. I think this is where I will sort of move on from the fireside conversation. Thank you so much for Ashmita joining me today in this conversation. I think a lot of the insights that you have shared allow us to be able to have a much better understanding of how it is like to work with the data in the background, what the expertise of the data analyst is, what are the key responsibilities that he or she needs to be able to have in terms of understanding the different data sets that they actually work with. Yeah.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right, so going to our Q&A. So let me look at the questions that we do have right now. One of them being, someone asked, I'm hearing a lot about what customers are saying, but isn't one of the ongoing challenges with social listening is that we can't really identify the speakers? So we don't really know whose sentiments we are reading, right? So, like we discussed previously, both Theo and Ash described how we are sort of privacy compliant. While we cannot sort of capture sort of individual voices in that light, it always sometimes also gets lost in the vastity of data, right? The ability to use AI to distill and make sense of the conversation is still invaluable. Pairing social listening insights with other data sources is like sort of assembling a comprehensive toolkit for understanding your market. But it's not just about what people are saying, it's about connecting the dots between various sources to get a richer, more nuanced understanding. Think of it as of having conversation with your business data. Social listening provides one perspective, the chatter, the buzz, but combining with other data sets like inviting different experts to the table. It's the synergy that makes the strategy a little more robust, a bit more comprehensive. So while social listening might not give you the exact identity of every speaker, it still paints a vivid picture of the collective sentiment. It's like putting a pulse on the market and understanding the business world, which allows you to extract valuable insights. So thank you for that question. Theo, maybe you can answer this one. What are the platforms covered by Digimind currently?
We do have quite a number of sources. We are able to cover across the generic social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We also take data sources from, for example, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Digimind itself is continually trying to grow the different data sources that we have into other platforms. Even Chinese social media platforms like Xiaohongshu, Douyin, and etc. But of course, with this being said, we very much comply with the restrictions that the different platforms give to us as well. So it's quite broad, but also we work together with the different social media platforms to be able to establish what kind of data sources we can acquire from them.
Thank you to you. Here's a question for Ashmita. What are some examples of using social listening for marketing efforts on social media? Since you mentioned that you extracted sort of sentiments using key themes and memes from the data, or maybe you can share with the audience specifically some examples that you use for social media for marketing. Yeah.
Hmm. I can give you a couple of very top line examples without naming any brands. So, the first one I mentioned um, for a one of the very well known mobile phone companies had launched a handset, and somehow the way they had kind of structured their cameras, it was generating some disappointment, and also people were making a lot of fun of it. They were comparing it to stove burners, etc. So we picked up the cue, and then we used it to come up with a nice social post ourselves, which helped generate a good number of engagements ourselves because we were riding the wave. Uh, in the past, we have done social listening regularly, to help generate ideas for our social campaigns. The kind of campaigns that, because we need on the social marketing side, we need to have a regular supply of posts that are highly relevant and that are going on different channels that need to generate a good amount of engagements. So in order to stay highly relevant, we use social listening to come up with what are the latest buzzwords, what are the netizens talking about with respect to that industry. So that's one aspect. Then we have also done social listening regularly to monitor for crisis. With some of my companies in the past, especially for a certain telco that I've been associated with in the past, constant monitoring of crisis helped us understand if even if it was for that brand or for a particular competitor, when the crisis or an outage happened, what were customers facing, what were the kind of doubts or confusion points that they had, or what were their angst moments, how they expected to be compensated. So all these granular insights helped us come back with a communication strategy that we passed on to the call center that was handling all the complaints. And also it helped us come up with a remuneration package for, or rather a compensation package for people who were impacted by the outage. We also did social listening to understand how people are talking about competitors in our market. Then we were actively doing social listening for some key events for a previous IT company, very big player in the IT hardware space, where, because it was a very high profile event and we were spending a lot of money behind that event, we were doing social listening to see if it was generating the kind of buzz volumes and whether the buzz volumes and the kind of sentiments were paying off for the ROI behind behind that marketing spend for that event. So yeah, those are some of the examples.
Okay, thank you for sharing. I think what I'm thinking right now is actually quite um, in relation to what you just said. It's about also using social listening to answer key questions, right? Because if you're opening up to a broad scope, right, you're going to get a lot of noise, evidently. But if you're answering key questions about like, or you want to basically test hypothesis with social listening data, that's something that's very relevant for in order to anticipate a future launch or a campaign by sort of preempting what people might think about your product or offering. If you really see something that's coming on, you can basically put it into social listening and just await conversation and discussions once you launch your campaign. Yeah, basically that. So I think we have sort of run a little bit long, so I'll end the Q&A for now. But that also brings to the end of today's session. So apologies again if the webinar did run a little longer than expected, but I hope the information we presented together gave everyone a good grasp on the concept of horizon scanning and to really go about listening strategically. And if you have any further questions that you would like to pick our brains on, look for me or Theo after this webinar, and we'll be more than happy to chat. Otherwise, thank you to everyone. Thank you, Ash, for taking the time off this afternoon, and have a lovely weekend. Stay tuned for our next webinar. Goodbye.
Thanks everyone, bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.